Hello beautiful people, my name is Vendi and today I'm going to be bringing you a little WorldCon / Hugo Awards book haul. The observant among you might have noticed that I have changed location in a pretty dramatic way. I will talk more about that at a later point in time. It's not a topic that at present brings me much joy or much energy. In fact, it is quite draining. So suffice it to say that for now, what I'm going to be sticking with is creating content that makes me very happy, that relaxes me, that's super easy and relatively quick to do. And right now, what that is showing you some of the books that I either purchased or received or brought home with me after attending WorldCon this year in Glasgow. Unlike my previous book haul of this year, I have actually stuck to my book buying rules, which is huge for me. I ended up reading in excess of 40, maybe in excess of 50 of my owned books. I read a lot of graphic novels and manga, and I decided that that more than counted in terms of getting my TBR numbers down and allowed me to actually get some books for myself in the meantime to replenish my TBR as it will. And those are the books that I'm going to be sharing with you guys today. But for now, daylight is disappearing, the crickets are coming out, so I think it's best if I just get started and show you these books as quickly as I possibly can. The first book that I have to show you is actually not one that I got in Glasgow during the whole WorldCon everything, and I've already read it. So I'm feeling a little bit better about this book haul even as we speak, and that is The Adventure Zone, The Suffering Game. This is volume 6 of the Adventure Zone graphic novelization. The Adventure Zone is a super popular podcast done by the McElroy brothers and their father Clint McElroy. It follows Magnus the Human Fighter, Taco the Elf Wizard, and Merle the Dwarf Cleric, some pre-rolled characters that the McElboys turned into rather beloved characters going through a long running arc. As this is volume 6, I don't know how much I can get into it without spoiling the rest of them, but suffice it to say that this is a adaptation of a D&D live play podcast that is available basically wherever you get your podcasts. And while it starts out as a sort of like goofy comedy idea of what D&D could be, it turns into a story that's quite a bit more. As you can maybe see from the characters on the cover, by this point in the series, they're kind of all going through it on their quest to save the world, which is certainly not what any of them signed up for when they began this journey. Balance meant a lot to me, and it meant a lot to a lot of my friends who I kind of met through D&D basically. And so getting to hold a physicalization of a piece of media that meant a lot to me, that means a lot in and of itself. I feel like more and more often digital media feels like it's really ephemeral and like it can be taken away from you, which streaming services are not doing anything to dispel that sort of feeling in myself and other consumers. So to have a piece of something that matters a lot to me that I can hold is really nice. Even if it does change from the source material a little bit, I do like the direction they're going. The basic plot remains the same, but obviously there's a difference between an audio medium and a visual medium. So I'm enjoying seeing the way that it's being adapted to be made into a graphic novel. I think it's really cool what they're doing, and I'm very excited for the 7th and final volume to come out probably in the next 2 or so years. Moving into the books that I actually got at Glasgow, the first I want to show you is one I'm currently reading right now, and that is What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. Think Edgar Allan Poe meets The Last of Us. It follows a retired soldier called Alex Easton who goes to the house of Usher to meet with his friend Madeline Usher, who has called them there because Madeline is worried that she feels like she's dying. It's been about 10 years since Alex gone to this home, and when they get there, they find it an absolute like horror story. The grounds of the house are absolutely covered in fungus and weird fauna. Madeline, his friend, is sleepwalking and speaking in tongues. Her brother Roderick is not much better. And so Alex and a mycologist and an American doctor have to basically team up and figure out what's going on with this family and with the weird natural thing that is ruining their lands and family. I really like T. Kingfisher. I first read some of her stuff in preparation for these Hugos, in preparation for the voting for them, and I just fell in love with the stuff that she's doing. I think she does a really great job of her fairy tale integrations in her stories, so I'm also really excited to see how she's going to take a non-fairy tale source material and turn it into a twisty, interesting T. Kingfisher type of thing. I also really like the way that she spoke on some of the panels that I attended that she was on. She's really smart, it seems like, but in a very like approachable way, and I found that to be true for her writing as well. It's very elevated and interesting, but also not in an alienating sort of way. The next two books I want to show you are Galaxy Awards 1, Chinese Science Fiction Anthology, and Ecoceanic, Southern Flows. These are two collections of short stories presented by Future Fiction, who I'll have linked in the description box below. Essentially, they center the voices in speculative fiction that aren't always centered. We get a tremendous amount of American stories and Anglophone stories, and not so many in other languages. And a lot of things are translated out of English and into other languages, but the reverse doesn't happen very often. And what really sold me about these stories is that in addition to the Anglophone translation, you also get the original text of the story in its original language side by side with it. So if you are a speaker of the other language, you can kind of experience that as well. Basically, I met Francesco Verso, one of the guys sort of behind the whole thing, at a booth, and he talked to me about his mission. And the more he talked about it and the more he explained not only his passion for bringing translated fiction into an Anglophone audience, not just to benefit the Anglophone audience, but also to benefit the authors from often marginalized groups, I was basically sold. They were super affordable. Again, I'll have them linked in the description box below if translated fiction is your jam. I've already read a couple stories from Galaxy Awards 1, and I can confidently say that they picked some really, really cool things to bring into a Anglophone audience. Also, these covers are just... do you see that? Hello? It's beautiful. It's just stunning. Love it. One of the things that I went to do during WorldCon was attending a sort of book launch, or a book pre-launch in this case, because many of the books that were talked about weren't quite out yet. And it was really cool to see these up-and-coming authors talk about their books that they were having come out. And of course, hearing them get excited about them got me very excited about them. So I picked up a couple of arcs, some finished copies, and I'm excited to share them with you right now, starting with Limelight and Other Stories by Lindsay Kroll. So far, I have read only the first book of the series, Patchwork Girls, which kind of promises to anchor the rest of the stories within this collection. Patchwork Girls is about a young girl who is basically fake killed for movies over and over again, except she is really kind of dying. She's been altered by technology in order so that she can survive these things and not feel the pain, but one day she does feel the pain after her death, and she figures out that her parents actually had her altered without her consent. I think sci-fi and speculative fiction in general is a really good way, and I feel like it always has been, a way for people to sort of talk about the preoccupations and concerns they have about the social landscape to which we belong. And I have a feeling that Limelight is going to really kind of get into the female experience, specifically being a woman under capitalism and all that that means, just vis-a-vis loneliness and exploitation and feeling outside of one's own body, but also being kind of forced to feel like one's body is one's entirety because that is the way that other people have found to value you. I also got a copy of Meet Me in Another Life by Katrina Silvey. She was actually pitching a up-and-coming sort of time travel rom-com that she's doing, and the way that she talked about it just made it seem so funny and delightful and like a thing that I absolutely need to pick up the moment it comes out. And then I found out that the book that she already has out also has to do with sort of altered timelines and sort of time travel, but not really, except this one is promised to make you cry, where the other one is promised to make you laugh. So I'll read you the little tagline because I think that it will tell you why it was sold for this one as well. Under a ruined clock tower, Tora and Santi are about to meet for the very first time again. Their connection is instant. They feel like they've known each other forever. Maybe they have? Now they must unravel the mystery of their strange connection, but some mysteries take more than one lifetime to solve. I mean, I am a sucker for any romance that takes a while to burn. I love a good slow burn, and what can be more slow burned than a multi-lifetime romance? The next book I have to show you is We Are All Ghosts in the Forest by Lorraine Wilson. This will be out on the 7th of November of this year in the UK, and I don't know exactly when off the top of my head in the US, but I'll have it on the screen somewhere. But the TLDR of this one is the internet is dead and its ghosts haunt us all. So I love a spooky ghost story, and again, I think that sci-fi is a wonderful medium for figuring out the things, the preoccupations that we have in our collective society, and I think the internet, as it grows and as we've sort of seen it develop even over my lifetime, has become more and more of a terra incognita, despite being a thing that more and more people feel that they're like digital natives to. The idea of the story is that some great global catastrophe happens and obviously the internet goes down. People go back to sort of village-like communities and figuring out how to survive without the modern amenities that we've all gotten used to. Except rather than zombies, what we have haunting us here are sort of digital footprints, digital ghosts, and they are hungry and don't have really anywhere to go but toward the people that created them. It follows an older woman whose sibling got lost basically in the woods where all the ghosts are living, and then many years later, a child comes out of the woods who is completely mute, does not speak, but looks exactly like her sibling, and the protagonist needs to figure out what's going on here. The next book I have to show you is The Words of Kings and Prophets by Shauna Lawless. This is another book that is out already. The third book of this series is coming out soon. This is book 2, but if I understand, these are all books that can be sort of read as companions or standalones. I am a huge fan of Celtic mythology in literature. Specifically, though, I am a fan of when that mythology is used and not appropriated. And just hearing Shauna Lawless talk about the research that she did for this book and this entire series kind of immediately made me decide I was going to give this book a shot. And if you would also like to give it a shot, but you are not sure that you can commit to multiple very long books, there is an e-novella prequel called Dreams of Fire. It looks like this. I'll have that linked in the description box below where you can pick up a free ebook of it and see what you think of the series. And the final free book I got at this table where a lot of indie authors and stuff could sort of post was Little White Hands by Mark Cushion. This book follows a young little boy named Garland who has idolized like knights and stuff in his stories and has always wished he could be something like them. Garland lives in a world of basically eternal spring. The forces of winter and spring fought it out millennia ago, and winter ended up losing. There have been many generations that don't believe winter even existed. It is basically a myth from story. But as the feuding factions begin to rise back up again, Garland realizes that his ambitions of becoming a knight might not even be a thing that he has a choice in, and he finds himself swept into a world of impossible monsters and giant journeys to end up defeating an enemy that he never even thought could be real. Longtime viewers know that I love a chosen one, and this seems like a chosen one who's going to be very sweet. Another author that was at that sort of pre-launch thing in anticipation of the second book of her duology is an author that I also saw in a bunch of panels, and I just really like the way that she spoke and the way that she spoke about her book in particular, and that is Genevieve Dimova, or Jen as she referred to herself, and her debut was Foul Days. This book follows a witch named Kosara in the city of Chernograd. It is a city where monsters roam free, and the only way for a witch like herself to escape is when the veil is the thinnest on a high holy day whose name I forget. And the only thing that's really stopping her is her ex, Zmei, or dragon. And you think that wouldn't be a problem, except Zmei is also known as the Tsar of monsters. He is incredibly powerful here, and Kosara can't really take him on without a little more oomph than she's currently got. And like with any ex, avoiding him is one thing, and Kosara's been doing that relatively effectively, except now Zmei has decided that he is going to be hunting her down. Hence Kosara's desire to escape, and hence her trading away the source of her magical powers in order to do so. There's a catch though. The source of her magic is her shadow, and when she trades it away, she becomes vulnerable to a sickness that affects shadowless witches. When she gets sick, she basically has two options: try to get her shadow back or try to figure out a cure. And the person who's holding her shadow is maybe somebody she doesn't want to be interacting with right now. I love the sound of this book. I love that it is adding a Slavic mythology to the table. We get a lot of sort of Russian-inspired stuff. We get a lot of Russian-inspired stuff written by people who aren't Slavic in the least. So it's really exciting to be able to support a Slavic author. Jen is Bulgarian, as she adds more dimensionality to a relatively underrepresented group of people in the fantasy space. I'm also super excited because as it gets colder and spookier, I feel like this will be the perfect book to just sort of sit down and read in one sitting. And in a book that is similar in terms of monster content, but perhaps in the exact opposite direction of Foul Days, I Want That Twink Obliterated, a collection of short stories edited by Trip Gailey, Robert Berg, and C.L. McCartney. The tagline for this is, "The twinks are among us, loving, lying, sashaying, betraying, storming the tower of Belzarian, the sorcerer, wandering the eldritch streets of Shoggothtown, or seizing power on Bavarin 11. Since the dawn of time, a cry has rung out across the stars. For too long, queer voices have been kept at the margins of pulp science fiction and fantasy. Now, 17 brave authors take up their pens to right that wrong and push the boundaries of excess, masculinity, and good taste." You know I'm going to support some queer writers, so in order to represent some of the gays and the theys, I will be championing this book to high heaven. This is the first you'll see of I Want That Twink Obliterated, but it will not be the last. The sun is really coming down now, so I'll try to get through the rest of these as quickly as possible. The next book I have to show you is Dragon Physician by Joyce Ching. Can a boy succeed in a world of dragon riders and races run by women for women? Jishin, the son of the great physician Shu, works as a cleaner boy at Qianshan Rookery. However, when he becomes a dragon physician, his world begins to change. It's basically if How to Train Your Dragon was trans, and that's all I needed to hear. I love dragon stories. I feel like as of late, they are not getting the sort of respect that they deserve. And this looks and promises to be a very short, sweet, and impactful story following one of my favorite magical creatures. Okay, gonna show you a 3-in-1 because Daphne Press was at the end of the con selling 3 books for £10, and that is a deal that I cannot get past, especially when I saw that some of the books there were ones that I've wanted to read for forever. The books that I want to show you guys are the duology of Godly Heathens and Merciless Saviors by H.E. Edgman, and The Spirit Bears Its Teeth by Andrew Joseph White. Andrew Joseph White is the writer of Hell Followed With Us, another book on my TBR that was highly recommended by a very close friend of mine, so I basically trust implicitly that his books are going to work for me. After a failed attempt to escape a arranged marriage, Silas is shipped off basically to a madhouse to cure his veil sickness. And at this facility, young women are supposed to be turned into beautiful, obedient wives or essentially disappeared. So when the ghosts of some of these girls that have gone missing start begging Silas for help, he decides it's up to him to expose the wicked underbelly of this school. I don't know, I just think Andrew Joseph White is really neat. I really love trans stories and I want to champion more of them on here, so this was a no-brainer for me. And speaking of trans narratives, this duology also follows a non-binary protagonist. Jem is a non-binary Seminole teenager living in Georgia who has to do a lot of hiding of their identity, and the only person who really knows the truth of them is another kid, Enzo, who happens to live in Brooklyn, literally thousands of miles away. That is, Enzo knows almost everything about Jen. They don't know that Jen has visions and dreams, showing them magic and violence, and all of these dreams, despite being impossible and showing impossible things, feel incredibly real. Enter Willa May Hardy, a new girl who seems to know things about Jen that she shouldn't be able to. And after somebody calling herself the goddess of death attacks, Willa tells Jen that the two of them are reincarnated gods who've known each other and loved each other across many, many lifetimes. But Jen, or the being that is now Jen, hasn't always been the best god. They've made a lot of divine enemies, and now Jen and Willa have an entire pantheon coming after them. Love stories that span multiple generations, the slowest of so burns, count me in. A series that is actually already complete and I can hold the end of it in my hands. Another win. I'm really enjoying H.E. Edgman's Witch King, which is their other book that they've written, or other series that they've written, one that was recommended to me by another very close good friend who knows my tastes very, very well. So I'm excited to sink my teeth into this series of theirs as well. And down to the final 2. These ones were a little bit cover buys, but it was at the Illumicrate table, so you cannot actually blame me. The first of the 2 books I want to show you is The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. Dr. Micaiah Johnson, by the way, because she has actually completed her PhD, which is very cool and exciting. Basically, the idea of the story is that a scientist has cracked the multiverse theorem. They figured out how to access the other universes, the sort of parallel worlds that brush up against our own. The one catch is you can't travel to a world where your counterpart is still alive, which, blessing and curse for Kara, because if only 8 of her gangers are still around, that frees her up to take a job where she is essentially doing a lot of travel between these universes. She's grown up basically taught by the School of Hard Knocks, so she will do just about anything she needs to in order to survive and keep herself safe and thriving. But when another one of her precious few doppelgangers ends up dying under mysterious circumstances, Kara is plunged into a world of more intrigue than she maybe bargained for. I've been really getting into more thrillers lately, so a sci-fi thriller seems right up my alley. And the final book that I have to show you today, and I'm regretting that I didn't start filming sooner when there was a little more light, because this one is absolutely stunning, is Fathom Folk by Eliza Chan. Did I know much about this book prior to purchasing it? No. Do I regret that at all? Absolutely not, because under this gorgeous jacket we have some of the most intriguing jacket copy that I've ever seen. Welcome to Tian Kawi, a shining pearl of human civilization and a safe haven for those fleeing civil unrest. Or at least that's how it first appears. But in the semi-flooded city, humans are quite literally on top, peering down from shining towers and aerial walkways on the Fathom Folk. Sirens, sea witches, kelpies, and kappas, who live in the polluted waters below. For half-siren Mira, promotion to captain of the border guard means an opportunity to help her downtrodden people. But if earning the trust and respect of her human colleagues wasn't hard enough, everything Mira has worked toward is put in jeopardy when Nami, a know-it-all water dragon Fathom Folk royalty, is exiled to the city. When extremists sabotage the annual boat race, violence erupts, as does the clampdown on Fathom Folk rights. Both Nami and Mira must decide if the cost of change is worth paying, or if Tian Kawi should be left to drown. This is Eliza Chan's debut novel, and I am so excited to see how all of that plays out. I love a bit of political intrigue, and more than absolutely anything, I'm a huge sucker for any water-based mythos. I love a good sea creature. I love a good dragon as protagonist, and I'm always a fan of stories that center the voices of the people most downtrodden by a society. So I have a feeling that this is going to be one of my favorites of the year already. I don't know, I have a feeling in my heart, and I'm trying not to jinx it after the whole Honey Witch thing, but I have a good feeling about Fathom Folk. Please don't let me down. Please, please don't let me down. You're so beautiful. And that is it. That is my Hugo's book haul, or rather WorldCon book haul, because none of these books were actually Hugo nominees for this year. But if they play their cards right, they might be on the ballot for next year. Who knows? Mostly, I'm just really glad to have sat down and filmed this video. Things have been a little bit crazy, hectic in my personal life. I'm way behind on showing you guys the books that I have read and doing my wrap-ups, and feeling like I'm behind, it tends to put me in a bit of like a paralysis sort of thing. So what I'm gonna do is try to like remove the guilt that I have for that and actually give you guys some reviews for the things I've been reading, because despite not posting, I have been reading a lot. Dissociation is one hell of a drug, and one of the best ways that I can pull myself out of it into a little more of a healthy place is by reading and enjoying and loving my speculative fiction books. And luckily for me now, I have even more really intriguing stuff to choose from. One of the big turmoil things that has happened was a very sudden move, which has meant that a lot of my books, a lot of my TBR books, are currently not in a place where I can access them as easily. So I'm happy to have sort of recreated a physical TBR so that I do have things that I can reach for when I need to. I'll get more into it at a later time and in a different video, but suffice it to say for now that I'm in a safe and good place, and that I am so excited to get to reading these books and sharing thoughts about them with you, because I've really missed that these past weeks. But before I get super emotional, I'm gonna get back to What Moves the Dead and end this video here. So thank you so very much for watching. If you like this video, please leave it a thumbs up, and if you like me, maybe consider subscribing to my channel. I will be doing my best to post every Thursday, and I'd love to have you join my little bookish family. Comment down below if you've read any of these books, or if you haven't, let me know which one intrigues you most to hear about, and I will prioritize that for my reading in the coming weeks. But if leaving a full comment is too hard, I totally get it. I'm also low in the spoons right now. Instead, go ahead and leave me either a dragon or an alien emoji, depending on whether you like sci-fi or fantasy better. If you like both, feel free to spam both in the comments. I'm always delighted to see both of those emojis, and I'm always delighted to see love for my spec fic darlings in whatever form it appears. But regardless, that is it from me for now. Thank you again so much for watching this video, and I hope to see you with the next one very soon. Goodbye.